I'd like to open it up today. My name's Paul Higgins. I'm your host for today. Just to give you a little bit more of background, I'm very much in the whole growth and innovation element with inside training. What that means is obviously my should we say my footprint. It's working with awarding organisations, looking at their requirements, working with and as a training provider, so I can sit on both sides of the coin. I put solutions into training providers for them to meet their objectives, as much as we were talking about construction, MVQs, courses, done all that element to it. Large employer engagements, also with the sector skills councils, all that lovely great thing as well. Really looking at upskilling, reskilling, but also from a technology point of view. And today, it's very much about the business of training and content strategy. So please participate, add your comments, your thoughts as we go through this journey today. So at that point, I will perhaps hand the mic over to Jan. Jan today is our sponsor. So Jan, perhaps would you like to just give us a little bit of an overview to yourself, Jan? And as a sponsor, you do now have only 2 minutes to do that introduction. And he's on mute. That's another minute.
Typical thing to forget. Yes, that's just mean to give me 2 minutes. That's
okay.
I'll try to live up to that. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, Jan van Delsen. I am the CEO of Immissio, and what we do is make more training impact. We work with training companies. Several people on this call know as well. What we do and how we do it, I just want to give the 2-minute version of that. We work with quality and quantity for training providers. Quality is design, creation, delivery, and measurement of training impact. So we help training providers do that. We also work on the quantity side, help you get more learners. And we do that in different ways to enable digital learning, but also help with the scalability in business modeling, workshops or consultancy on pricing strategy, how to enter new markets, all these kind of things. So we do quite a few things on that. What we're good at, we talk about topics such as learning transfer, how you can get personalized learning, adaptive learning. You see the name Memo Trainer there. That's spaced repetition. Social learning, different things. Basically, we help you with designing, creating, delivering, measuring training impact. You can see some things more, topics more there. The business of training community, you might have seen that this is a business of training webinar. So we do the webinars. We also do a conference. We'll talk about that later. How we achieve this training impact. So we work with a company called A New Spring, which is a company that is delivering or that has a blended learning platform. We are their strategic partner for the UK, for Ireland, some other countries. We also are launching a platform that helps to measure training impact. We do content, whether it's bespoke or content libraries. One of our guests today is helping us with those content libraries. We'll talk about that. And the services and consultancy that we have around that. You see the word research on your left-hand side because we like an evidence-based approach. So we work with universities. We write and help write case studies of companies that have done great results. Sometimes those case studies are then submitted as awards. So our customers also win awards. And we like to share all that research, case studies, those results with the community. And that's why we're doing these webinars right now. I'm going to leave it at that because my 2 minutes are probably up. So thank you, Paul.
It was right. That was 3 minutes and 10 seconds. So I'll allow you that percentage increase is probably an error in our measurement. But thank you so much for that. And obviously,
thank you.
Say the discussions. I think we talk about impact, don't we? And I think that's very true. And obviously, that evidence-based approach, I think, it is so important, because without that, how do you base anything going forward as well? So thank you. So today, Jan, obviously, you can't hear. We've got some two guests today. So at that point, perhaps I would like to ask perhaps Tom, if you would like to perhaps provide an introduction to yourself, and perhaps a food for thought around content strategy as part of your opening gambit. Don't worry, you got more than 3 minutes and 10 minutes for your introduction. So Tom, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I might need longer than that. No, I'm joking. So I've been in learning and development since the mid-90s. I started with one of the major high street banks in their retail and then their commercial divisions. I then moved on to spend 10 years working in a local county council, moving from banking to social care, being the social care training manager for 10 years. And then I spent the final 5 years of my employed life working for the NHS in a pharmaceutical manufacturing business that was ultimately externalized to the public, to the private sector. Unfortunately, my experience through that has been that I've been made redundant 3 times. And so, taking the message on my last redundancy, I decided to, as I look at it, become a gamekeeper become a poacher after having been a gamekeeper for the last 20 odd years, and decided to set up my own business, The Alchemist, as a learning and development provider. Primarily, I'm focusing on e-learning as a delivery channel, but I also have some backup around coaching and team design and team building, learning development auditing, and that sort of thing. But the main focus, I guess, for me is around e-learning at the moment as an off-the-shelf product to enable me to get familiar with the tools I'm using, to bring myself up to speed, because it's so easy to get out of date when you're busy doing corporate stuff. But also then to use that as a way of setting out my stall for the consultancy stuff that I want to do on the side. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's me.
Thank you, Tom. And I know that... yeah. I should have put the clock on that one. That was a really speedy one. But also, I think Tom, obviously from our chats as well, as I talk about this as a community, so we've actually got a mutual connection of, again, how we look at this whole Rubik's of life in some respects. I know if there's anyone at L&D, we're not going to talk about triangles today. We're going to talk about Rubik's Cube, just obviously how you look at it. But I know that you and I, I was supporting the managed services for Royal Borinca Scotland, and I think you were on the other side. So in this community, we are all connected. It's just trying to find that connection.
Yeah.
And I also think everyone here today, we've all got superpowers. And sometimes I think these type of conversations is really trying to help them find your superpowers. So I'm leading up to Tony, when we're talking about superpowers here. So Tony, would you like to perhaps give us an introduction to yourself for everybody on the session today, please?
Yes, of course, Paul. Well, I don't like to follow being thought of as a superpower. I'll let myself down. My name is Tony Small. I currently work for an organization called Core Learning Services. We also have a brand called CoreSource. But historically, my skill set is both in sales and business development of training, primarily, and also being a training or building my own training business, which historically was a classroom training business. But over the last 10 years, I've been working in the digital learning space, helping organizations understand how they can deploy off-the-shelf e-learning content as part of the learning strategy and selling solutions that go with that. So, and I guess, I think your question, Paul, was, well, what do you wish you'd sort of thought about more early on in your career? Well, obviously, digital learning wasn't there when I started my career, but this concept of truly blending learning is one that I think training companies have talked about for years, but I don't think we've always cracked it, and we should have cracked it a lot earlier. And I like to think in a small role I do now, I do truly use blended learning with off-the-shelf content to actually deliver a meaningful learning experience. But I wish I'd done it earlier, Paul.
Yeah, no, and I think, and this conversation, we have a title that we're working underneath today, which is that whole blended sort of strategy. But I think what's really important today is that means so many different things to so many different people. And I think, you know, your story that you were just talking about, it is one really important sort of, should we say, pillar of our industry as well. But sometimes because it's, you know, it's basically a way to rapidly get to market as well, sometimes is really quite an interesting thing. So so Tony, thank you very much for that that point of view. So really, to open it up, as I said, if you've got any questions, anyone, and that even includes, you know, with Tony's talking, Tom, if you've got an idea or anything like that, Alex, Dermot, anything like that, you know, please use the chat facility and we'll try and bring it to life and have a bit of a fun in this conversation today. As you say, none of us got suits on, no one's got ties. We've gone past that point. Today is about using all our experiences that we have all got. We are here, obviously, hosting this session, but that doesn't mean to say we're the subject matter experts, and we don't claim to be the subject experts. What we want to do is use this as an opportunity for everybody just to chip in with some ideas, their experiences. So none of us are sitting on a pedestal, and please use this opportunity to have a bit of a chat and share some expertise, some insight. And what I've learned is those real life stories. Those are the ones that really count and what really do seem to resonate with people. So I think when we talk about, you know, content strategy, is it important? Yes. Do we get it wrong? Yes. Would we like to improve it? Yes. And I think one thing that I've learned is that you can have all these great ideas, and if you fix it in stone, it's as good as the day that that stone was cast. I think what you need to think about in life and in business is to have a very much an agile content strategy, because what happens is that we have a great idea today, and tomorrow our competition have a different way of looking at it. So they're getting advanced in us. So we really need to think about it. Tom, you talked about different ways, Tony as well, that evolution always seems to be one ahead of a step of us in some respects. So when we think about our content strategy, we need to make sure it's an agile one. So from my point is really, when we talk about it, content strategy, why do we talk about it? Obviously, I'm a business development manager, you know, similar to like Tony previously as well was saying about that. So we need to think about it from a business growth perspective. We need to think about it from an innovative point of view, but also a competitive positioning point of view as well from that point of view. So yeah, is it courses or is it content? Because content means so many other things. That could be your marketing strategy, your comms, you know, your social media feeds as well. So I know we're pretty think about it very much around courses and content and how that actually operates. But really, what is the purpose of it? Tom, if I could perhaps ask you just to kick this off as well. You looked at it perhaps from a business perspective, but when I talk about content strategy, what does that really mean for you?
Well, actually, I'm going to go back a little bit, because one of the things for me that's important around providing learning and development consultancy is about not just the training stuff. So I'm a big fan of Kathy Moore and the Map It approach. So when a customer comes to me and asks me, you know, this is a problem I've got, then if they're coming to me straight away with we want this e-learning or we want this course, then I have to ask them whether they're prepared to go back and look at actually what the issue is. And I think that's important for two reasons. One, because otherwise we're just dumping stuff on people which may not meet a need. But for me, the idea of a blended approach isn't just about different types of learning intervention. It's the bigger package. It's the other stuff. It's the environment. It's the culture. It's all of those other things that need to be worked on as well. So we can do a great piece of intervention, a great course, maybe with some memo training, maybe with some some spaced events and all of those things. But if when they go back into the workplace, they're not able to apply it because they're too busy, they're not supported, other people don't know what they're going on, then it's just not going to work. One of the things I'm really important and I think is crucial to what we think about is the fact that learning is not an event, it's a journey. I hate the word journey, but that idea that it takes time rather than it's just a one-off hit. I mean, I've got two kids. I've never ever managed to get them to do anything I want based on one thing, one conversation, one intervention. It's a constant drip. It's a constant piece of work. And I think that's got to be the same with whatever content we are coming up with.
Yeah. And some of the points you just talked about, you know, is the fact is of like, are we actually being addressed with the right question? And the fact is that I see it as well that sometimes if I think one of the other audience today, I think is in the construction industry at the moment, the biggest influence is that with CITV that they've got, actually I'll put it like this: anyone on this course, would any of you like a free course? What would your response be? So at the moment, a content strategy that would you like a level 6 in whatever it needs to be, whether it's leadership management, construction, would you like that? A free course? And it's like, oh, actually, yeah, I would. Would that be your initial reaction, wouldn't it? But why? Well, but so basically, how would you address that in the market as a business? How would you address the fact is that CITB at the moment until the end of this month you can actually have free training if you're a registered business. So how, as a training provider, are you set up for that? Are you too late to the game? And so it's really thinking about all those other business influences that we've seen. And yeah, obviously, and what it does influence your strategy. Because if I'm here talking to everybody here today, and I've got an audience of 40 people that I could actually broadcast this information to, but does that message mean the same thing to every single one of you? The fact is that you could be on your own career journey. I'm looking to advance my career. I need to get another job. It's about all those different influences coming through. So actually, Dermot, you just put a question in the text. I just want to bring that a little bit more to life for me.
Figure out what the mute is. Yeah. Yeah, somebody, I think it was Tom, was making the comment that, we can train people and more and more since COVID, an awful lot of training has gone online. And whatever about good trainers being able to work a room, it's very hard to work as you are right here now, a whole load of people looking at you, and some of them with cameras off, some of them with cameras on, and get to kind of get a gauge of, is whatever it is that you're trying to train sinking in? Is it actually taking root? And one of the things that I kind of discovered some years back is that if I don't force them to use it as part of the training, then I don't think they get it. I'm always reminded, I think it was Confucius is reported of saying that I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, I do, I understand. And it's that I do tends to get more people to buy into what it is that you're actually trying to teach them. In today's world, and I'm going to sort of rely on my gray hair here now in a serious way, those that might be younger than me tend to have a shorter attention span. So therefore, how do you kind of not only deal with that, but actually get them to implement it? And over the last 5+ years, I have not done any training that didn't require them to do some kind of a small project to show me that they've actually got something out of this. And in fairness, in most cases, I use that as a selling point, because I say to the company that's paying for the training, look, these people will go off and they will do good, and that usually outweighs whatever you pay me in terms of your training. But it's, how do you get that message out there when you're looking at a screen? Mm-hmm. Very easy. Well, I won't say it's easier to do it inside in a room, particularly when you can start to feel the people, making statements as you go. But
okay.
When you can't get them to sort of contribute online, it can be a bit difficult.
Yeah. I see you got your hand up. I'm just going to make one observation, Dermot. What also is about that, we have a class today, and I think you always have to revert back to when you're at school. What course did you really enjoy? And that's because the person that was at the front of the room engaged with you, and that was the courses that you really liked. But equally, in what you were just talking about, Dermot, you need to find the champions, don't you, to spread that message. So Thank you very much for stepping forward, because now you're my champion, and I'm going to rely on you today to try and get everyone else talking. So Alex, watch out, because you'll be next. But Jan, I can see you got your hand up.
Thank you, and I love how this conversation where Tony, Tom, Dermot, we all talked about things that relate to each other. What you talked about is, to me, I translate it as relevance of training. I have to implement it. I have to do something with it. There's a reason to take this training, and the word free training is nice, but if it's not relevant to me, who cares? And I also, what Tony mentioned was Tony talked about blended training, and I'm a big believer in that. We did some research with a well-known university, which concluded that learners love blended because you can do stuff in your own time. Instructors love blended because you get contextualized questions back, which is much more motivating. And the training company loves it because it's more profitable. So all stakeholders, if you like the word blended. But more importantly, I think the organization where the trainee, the learner works, likes it because it has more impact. And from a content perspective, content strategy, this is about. The different modalities that are used really enable that blend. It's not just the definition of blend that we use is self-paced learning plus instructor-led. But that's self-paced learning, by the way, also the instructor-led, but lots of different modalities that you can use within that. And that's, I think, where the power lies. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think where you're sort of going with that as well, and what I look at is about building that sort of that recognized authority, that brand, and that trust. And we all like acronyms. And I was some time when I was down at the Fire Service College, they used the 3 A's, which was assess, assured, accredited. And what that does, that gives that fuzzy feeling basically to anyone that's actually going to go on that journey. I think which is the word that Tom used, but all that experience. But Tony, I can see you've got your hand up as well. Would you like to come to the table?
It was sort of picking up, I think, on what Dermot was talking about, the idea of needing people to go and do something afterwards. And I was involved in writing a keynote speech for a training organization a few years ago. I am going back 5 years, but I based it on the concept of curiosity. And I truly believe that, as learning and development people, sometimes we forget if we want people to take ownership of their own learning, which I think is ultimately what makes them do things back in the workplace when they've left this session, you've got to pique their curiosity. And I think one of the challenges with that is once you start to strategize, so I know this is talking about content strategy, curiosity is very informal. Everybody's different. What's going to pique one person's interest is not going to do another. And the challenge for L&D is how do you create an environment where curiosity is piqued when you have to do it, one, at scale, and two, in an organized fashion. You need to bring in disorganized learning somehow into the framework. That's what I wish to sort of share, Paul. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, and also the point of being disruptive as well. I always feel that sort of that yin and that yang. You've got to have both sides to it as well, and that whole mix. Because I think what we were talking about our last event, actually, we were talking about blended templates. I think was the element to it. But what it was really about is the true way that people learn, retain information that makes it more memorable as well. And I know that plays into this sort of market space as well. So I think for what I'm sort of feeling about is that, how do we engage? How do we make it relevant? How do we make it interesting? How do we make it fun? It is a real part of when we actually look at the strategy, but it's how do we communicate that outwardly? So the fact of, thought leadership that's built into your content strategy as well. The fact is of, Jan, you talked about your research. I think it was with Oxford University, wasn't it? So that was trying to be thought-provoking, leadership-led, independence. So basically to validate and support the content strategy that you were looking to roll out. I mean, would you say that that's a fair comment there, Jan? Using those sort of tools inside your content strategy.
Absolutely, it's different tools, but I'm a marketeer from background, and what I think the overlap is that content strategy in training is the same as in marketing, which is reuse the materials you already have, what you already done, because that if you're talking about training development, it lowers cost. Yeah, reusing stuff I've already done before. It doesn't always have to be in the same format, but that principle, I think, is quite handy to make it more impactful.
Okay, Adrian, you made a comment in the chat as well. Some quite interesting sort of statements there. Would you like to just bring that to life as well for us, please?
I always get nervous when people shout my name out. It's a good thing, Paul, of making sure we're all staying awake.
Absolutely.
I think so. Yeah, there's a couple of things. Just, I mean, for those of you kind of able to kind of split your attention appropriately, there's always interesting stuff going on in the chat alongside the live conversations. I think that's one of the benefits of doing Zoom or Teams. We can have that kind of multitude of approaches. I think something about, just let me scroll back just to kind of put it out. So I think there's something about the content earlier about how learning is implemented, the impact of learning. As Jan was saying as well, impact happens over time. As the trainers, the tutors, we're only with those learners for a microcosm, for kind of a split second. And so much of our clients' view of us and impact and relevance of us is based on what happened in that moment. And our argument is it needs to be sustained. So as some others have said as well in the chat, the way we design learning, the content we put into that has to cover not only the technical knowledge, but the competency stuff, the relational building stuff, so people know how they can work with each other afterwards to keep that implementing. So I think there's content in terms of competency stuff as well as knowledge and technical stuff. And then also another kind of split on the side was about generational gulfs as well, and how younger learners we're seeing have anecdotally shorter attention spans because of the whole TikTok thing. Speaking of, hopefully you've all got your flasks ready for the tea time alarm later on this afternoon when that comes around. If you don't know about the tea time alarm, then you're not on TikTok. Sorry. But yeah, there's something about how we can kind of adapt our content. So as Jan was saying, but that whole point about a marketing approach. So it's not just delivering that content once we've created it and agreed it, it's flexing it according to our audiences, our learners' positions and understandings.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Alex, thank you very much, Adrian. Alex, you put a similar sort of theme in there, and I wonder if you can bring that to life, because as Adrian was just talking as well, I obviously I go to lots of events, and we talk about the attention span, and I think it must have been 2-3 years ago, I think it was. And if I went to a presentation and a flipping goldfish on it to tell me my span of extension of memory or something, it was 7 seconds type of thing, and all these goldfish on every single presentation, it's like, okay, guys, don't just keep doing what the Joneses do. Do something different. And how the hell do you differentiate yourself in a very competitive market space? But Alex, would you like to bring it to a little bit more for you? Talk about younger groups and everything like that. I'd love to sort of get your input on this sort of subject, whether that's the content strategy or just our span of attention.
I'll use one example. So I train people in how to make audio programs, podcasts or radio programs.
Yes.
And for, few years ago, I'd have said, okay, this is kind of, what do you enjoy about radio? I'm going to teach you to edit. I'm going to teach you to do all these different things. What I do now is the first thing I do, especially when it's with a younger group of people, which invariably is on this course, I just say to them, give it a go and make me a 10-minute program. And I reverse engineer. We come back and I say, okay, what was difficult? And they say, the time was a bit difficult. We didn't work very well as a team. We didn't all this kind of stuff. And I go, okay, let's help you with the bits that you struggled with. But if I said at the beginning, do you know how to make a radio program? They'd have sort of said, yeah, probably. We could probably do it. So I make them do it, make them realize they can't do it, that, they struggle with some bits, and then swoop in to help them with the bits they struggle with. And they're far more engaged, I'm finding, if I start that way round and things like that. Same with creativity. I'll do a similar work around with creativity.
Yeah. And I look back at my own life as well in some respects. I'm in training now and I've been there for a few years now, but I actually started out as an engineer, and people say, what makes a good engineer? And I think it's about problem solving. And what I find these days is that skill of problem solving doesn't seem to be so prevalent in younger generations coming through, because their world is different to where I was. So it's how we adapt, but we still believe in the same values, I think, is where I'm going from this as well. So I think I love all this sort of conversation. I'm just conscious that we could talk forever, but I just want to move it on a little bit. Tony, what I was thinking about as well, different sort of strategies that you come across. So you were talking very much around off-the-shelf content and everything like that. How has that helped businesses that you've been working with? Could you bring that to life for us a little bit?
I'll try to. So do you mean how does off-the-shelf content help organizations deliver learning?
Yeah.
Is that the question? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess the challenge organizations have, and obviously COVID did something to accelerate this in a way, it is, one, workforces are disparate nowadays, and two, there's less money to spend on each person to cover a certain agenda. So digital learning works at scale in its purest form. Now, I'm not a believer in the purest form. I've already said blended is the way I think you should go. But remember, if you've got knowledge to impart, so if the training is around making sure somebody understands something from a knowledge point of view, then a single modality can work. If it's about behavior change, it absolutely cannot. So, when you're considering, well, I've got a disparate workforce, it doesn't matter how big it is, 50 staff or 1,000 staff, or, they come to us because they want something that's already been built. They don't have the subject matter experts to pull it together. So one issue you've got with digital content, who's going to design it? You need the subject matter expert. And then, it probably exists already. So why rebuild it? So if you're talking about compliance, most of those subjects already exist. So I find all sorts of organizations, from small 20 staff organizations to obviously the very large, come and look, particularly for mandatory training, to get that training delivered by off-the-shelf content. And we've got very large libraries that cover 90% of the subjects that are there. And obviously what you want to do for compliance is track that somebody's done it. So the platform will then track and audit for you that they've completed it. So that's, since COVID, I would say, I thought there'd be a peak in going digital for off-the-shelf content, and then it would go back down again. I've not seen it go back down. So I think, if you like, COVID forced organizations that weren't looking digital learning to go digital. They've seen the benefits and have stayed there somewhat. Obviously, they'll have gone back in some ways, but that's made a transition.
Yeah. And I think it's an important point to talk about, because, when we talk about innovation, sometimes, looking back to going forward is not a bad thing. And I do believe, having that library at your disposal is actually an advantage, but also it's then how do you blend that in? So I think where Alex was talking about that, so it's perhaps how can that help accelerate the journey? I think Tom talked about the journey, so that word journey is in my head for today. But it's also how then you can use that, and then how can you build onto that to build that journey, but make it more of an experience. I think some of the times, Jan, I think you've got involved with as well by using the off-the-shelf content, but then how look at different interactions. So, the old sort of Pareto law of 80% of that is done, but it's then what other things do you need? And I think, Jan, you've probably got some experiences perhaps of using that and blending it into that experience. Would that be a fair comment, Jan?
And I think actually a great example of how we work with Tony is we work with this training company, and their expertise is Python coding training. But people that learn about Python also have to learn some communication skills. Sometimes they're managers, they have to have some management skills. That's not the expertise of the training company. So they actually use some of the off-the-shelf courses that Tony provides and build it into their learning pathway, which I think is a great example of blending, but also using different modalities again in your training, and so you can really mix and match lots of different options. So great example. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, as Alex was sort of saying as well, people want it. Well, I think Alex was making they want courses shorter but smarter. I think is my adaptation of what Alex put in there as well. So I think those are really great things to sort of talk about. So, and I think when you look at research, and I know, Jan, we were talking about marketing, but with that content element to it, and put it into a marketing machine as well, the exponential sort of benefits of that messaging in how you actually grow an organization are exponential, aren't they? From that content strategy, is it 5 times more likely if you've got a content strategy, your growth to market phase, obviously, is it, I don't know, 5 times, 6 times increases basically in your penetration to the market space. One thing I was thinking about also, and I appreciate Tom and Tony have both got your hands up as well, but also in that content strategy, be interesting to see and how you feel about it from a lead generation perspective as well. But before we go down that question, perhaps Tony, you've got your hand up again. Would you like to come back in?
Yeah, sorry. Just to say, picking up from what Jan was saying, I've always thought the good old 10, 20, 70 model is the right way. And the side of life that I support in the work I do now, the off-the-shelf content, it's just 10% of the learning experience, and it should only be 10% if you're talking about a major program. And I used it in a consulting role myself, used some of our content where I was helping a new manager become a manager, covering all sorts of things from time management, team roles, delegation, setting objectives, managing difficult conversations, managing performance, all of those topics I covered using 12 short, and I know there's a comment in the chat about short, 12 30-minute e-learning modules plus 6 1-hour sessions with this person, then ask them to go out into the workplace and experience and do things and come back. That's the sort of blend that I believe we should be doing. Yeah.
And can I just, another point there, Tony, what you're just talking about, I recall obviously working with yourselves as a business, and what one thing do we do all the time that we do not train in? And you guys used to have a program about it, and I don't know if you can remember, Jan, as well, but it was, we're on our computers all the time. How many of us can do touch typing? And it's like, how can we build an impact into our lives, into our businesses, and just look at the efficiency savings as well? Because I think, like I say, we want to look at being competitive, but how the tools that we got, how effective and efficiently are we actually using our own tools today as well? And I just think it's like, when we talk about off-the-shelf content, and I don't think obviously that normally gets enough airtime, if I've been truthful, Tony, because we're looking at other things. So it's really good to have yourself and bring that a little bit more to life. But Tom, you had your hand up as well. So around equality and diversity on this session today, I would like to bring you back in as well.
Yeah, I just wanted, I guess, to highlight something I think is important as another aspect of the agility and the spread of stuff, is that even with off-the-shelf content, and I think I have an advantage in being a small provider, is the fact that just because I have a finished product doesn't mean that I can't adapt it for a customer. So on a B2B basis, I have the opportunity to provide them either with that thing on my own platform, or it can be exported as a SCORM product so that they can host it on their own platform. Or I'm also using my platform, but through a different route, or set up a customer on their own LMS, but I've managed it, but it's all branded for them. So that gives them on a business-to-business basis that element of flexibility, which I think is important when you're looking at that sort of space. Equally, one of the areas I look at is on the business to customer basis. So I'm also marketing my courses as individual for individual learners. And one of the things that I did there, influenced by the gaming industry, was I've got my primary platform, which is where I deliver most of my training, but I do a version of that of all the courses on a secondary platform, and the amount of work involved in creating it on that secondary platform is actually fairly minimal, because most of it is lift and shift. But what it does is it then opens up the market much broader for a relatively small amount of extra work. And I think both of those things are important in terms of when you're looking at getting your content out there. as to being that sort of having that level of adaptability.
Mm-hmm. No, interesting point. I just want to open it up to everybody else that's on the session as well, in your own respective worlds of content strategy. Have anyone got any success stories, basically, where that has actually been a major differentiator for you in your own individual market spaces? Because ultimately that's what we're trying to do here, is the fact of whether you're a coach, leadership management, what you're really trying to do is obviously find a differentiator, aren't you, in how you deliver, create, and basically engage. It's looking at all those differentials. I just didn't know if anyone else on the session today have had any great success stories using content strategy and helping them differentiate themselves. But while that is still happening, and obviously more text going into the screen, Tony talked about, with all the experience he's got and how he would do things slightly differently with all that knowledge. Tom, same question to yourself, really. If with all the experience that you've gained, and I think between us four that are the guests and hosts, we've got over 100 years of experience plus that we can share if there is the right question. But what would you do differently now that you didn't do beforehand with all your years of experience? If you can put it on a content strategy point, if you're just looking at it on a business front, the world's your oyster.
I guess the two things. One is in terms of my own business, I needed to have started earlier. That was one thing I should have done. The other thing was, and I alluded to this earlier, was it's very easy when you're caught up in the corporate world, and I use that in a broader sense, of not keeping up to date with stuff. And certainly my last 12 months has been a real deep dive into stuff that some of it's books, courses, webinars, that's touching stuff that's been around for a little while, but it's just that I've lost touch, because on a day-to-day basis it's delivering what's going on in the business. So those are, I guess, are the two main things that I think are important. Where that's happening now, which is useful, is because you can't have any webinar that I'm sure now that doesn't mention it, is keeping up with AI, because AI is such a fast developing issue, and I think it can make a huge difference for us, but we need to be on the front foot with it.
Do you know what, though? You've ruined this whole session, because we tried not to talk about AI. You're the first person and the only person to talk about AI. I mean, because I think, like I say, and I think maybe Tony may have started at the beginning, there's so much, and I think, with COVID, something changed obviously in our industries, isn't it, and type of thing. And obviously AI is just the next iteration, and that is a tool that will come in and advance it and everything like that. That's what I say. If we're having a strategy, we've got to make sure we've got an agile one, because if we don't, we're going to get overtaken by the person that has got more of an agile about them as well. So thank you very much, Tom, for that roundup. Tony, if words of wisdom is perhaps a phrase I may use for yourself, but with all your experiences, what one thing perhaps would you like to leave as a lasting thought for everybody on this session today?
I don't know now, Paul. I explained one earlier, but I guess, as a learning, so, spending my life in learning, I would say, be brave as a learning organization. Think differently, be brave, but remember the basics. I go back to saying curiosity, helping people explore things in the way they want to explore them. I think what Alex said was really valuable. And, my daughter's looking to study medicine, and I noticed that the medical degrees now are turning around to making the first year you're in front of a patient and you're problem solving. The point you made, Paul, about engineers, you problem solve from day one now as a medic, rather than do 2 years of boring classroom stuff before you get near a patient. Get people doing things they want to do. That's what I would tell myself as a younger self.
Yeah, and just to support that, the one phrase I use, just do the simple things well. As well. Yeah. I'm just conscious of time. Jan, as one of our pillars in the industry, have you got any other comments just to do this before I round off the session today?
My only comment at this point is, given the time, and my course in time management, is to thank everybody for participating, joining, their words of wisdom. So thank you very much for making this a great session.